Science. It sustains us, allows us to figure out who we are, what we are, our place in the universe. It deepens our understanding of our connection to each other, to animals, to our environment, but it also divides us. It separates us. As long as science has been recognized as an institution, it has been used as a proxy for social debate. But where does this distrust come from? Who causes this distrust? What do we do about it? This is a historical recounting of the distrust of science. The Copernican revolution refers to the paradigm shift between geocentrism and heliocentrism. Prior to the Copernican model of the solar system was the Ptolemaic model, which claimed a geocentric and geostationary system where the sun and all heavenly bodies revolved around the earth, which laid at the center of the entire universe. In 1543, Nicholas Copernicus published his work on the revolutions of celestial spheres, which provided sufficient evidence to support heliocentrism. This work caught the attention of Italian astronomer Galileo Galilei. In 1610, Galileo produced a telescope of which he was able to observe the heavens in a way no other person had before. With this telescope, he observed mountains on the moon, moons orbiting Jupiter, and the phases of Venus, all of which uprooted previously held convictions. In 1610, Galileo published Sidereal Messenger, which included his telescopic findings in support for Copernicanism. In 1616, the Catholic Church banned on the revolution of celestial spheres by Copernicus, and on the 12th of April, 1633, the Inquisition of Galileo began. In June of that year, Galileo was convicted of heresy and was sentenced to house arrest for the remainder of his days. It would not be another 300 years that the Church would rescind their conviction. There is no stark ending to the Copernican revolution, but it is said to have ended with the publication of the works of Sir Isaac Newton. Origin of Species, the work Darwin is most known for, was originally published on November 24, 1859. Origins went largely unnoticed in America until around the turn of the century, when attention was finally beginning to wane away from the Civil War. But by the 1870s, religious leaders in America began to worry about the implications of Darwin's work for the church. In the mid-20th century, evangelical Christians began speaking out against teaching of evolution in public schools. Despite widespread support from scientists, there was massive public pushback against Darwinism in America, not only because it contradicted the creation story of the Bible, but also loaned our existence to natural processes rather than a loving God. The Copernican revolution challenged man to consider himself as an insignificant portion of a broad universe, rather than the epicenter of it all. Darwinism took away the idea that we are made in God's image and likeness, but rather a circumstance of nature's organized chaos. But the debate over evolution is not an antiquity. In 1980, while running for presidency, Ronald Reagan insisted that if evolution is going to be taught in public schools, creation should also be taught with equal fervor. In 1993, a Gallup poll showed that 47% of Americans believe, quote, God created man pretty much in his present form sometime within the last 10,000 years, end quote, a sentiment that former Vice President Mike Pence subscribes to. For more than 50 years, the petroleum industry and politicians have been warned about the risks of burning fossil fuels. In 1959, physicist Edward Teller told the American Petroleum Institute that a 10% increase in atmospheric carbon dioxide could cause catastrophic sea level rise. In 1965, Lyndon Johnson's Presidential Advisory Committee warned that the global scale of pollution of CO2 could have direct effects on human life. And in 1970, Shell and BP began funding research into climate impacts from greenhouse gas emissions. By 1980, the evidence was so clear that the majority of petroleum companies began assembling a 50-year plan to cope with the impending climatic changes. The fossil fuel industry has invested millions of dollars into confusing the public. Robert Bruhl, an American environmental sociologist, found that between 2003 and 2010, fossil fuel companies had spent $900 million on misinformation campaigns. But from 2007 onwards, corporations began donating money through intraceable donor networks, which allows them to fund misinformation campaigns privately. All research shows that climate denial is directly correlated with political affiliation in the US, with those on the right being far more likely to deny the science than those on the left. Despite this, around 72% of Americans accept that climate change is happening, but only 57% accept that it is because of human activity. A powerful driver of climate denial is system justification, which is the need to protect and uphold existing systems. Climate change inhabits spaces of ethics, morals, social codes, and causes us to reconsider societal institutions on a broad scale. For this reason, those who benefit from the existing social dynamic might fear what tackling the climate crisis might bring. Distrust of science is something that has deep historical roots. Still today, approximately 70% of scientists are white and 72% are males. African American children die from asthma at 10 times the rate of non-Hispanic white children, and communities of color and low-income areas are disproportionately affected by environmental injustices. Less than 2% of studies funded by the National Cancer Institute have reached diversity goals, and fewer than 5% of National Institute of Health funded respiratory studies have included racial or ethnic minorities, despite dying from these diseases at higher rates than their white counterparts. Science has the potential to be the most trusted and effective institution, but before that can happen, there must be substantial changes to the way it operates. Through co-production, diversification, inclusivity, and depoliticization, science can enter a new era.